We are talking about Jeannette now. Hopefully not too technical or too involved. Just kind of a surface kind of survey of things Jeannette. One thing that impresses me about Jeannette is that it came from somewhere else. It came from Pittsburgh, really. A couple guys from Pittsburgh, H. Sellers McKee and James Chambers, were from families that were in the glass business, had been in the glass business for some time, in Pittsburgh. But things in Pittsburgh were getting a bit crowded, and there was a problem with the natural gas supply. And so they found out that gas had been found, natural gas had been found out around Jeannette. Actually, there was no Jeannette at that time. It was just a place along the Pennsylvania Railroad where natural gas had been discovered. And so McKee and Chambers got together money, bought property out at what became Jeannette, and started two large plants, one of which was for making window glass, the other one was for making tableware, the kind of stuff a nice, well-set table is accoutered with. You know, things like cream pitcher and the other kinds of salt cellar and toothpick holder and all the nice things you find on a good table. The glass business did get started, and in a year, Jeannette became populated to the point of about 3,000 people. It began in 1888, and by the end of '89, you know, that was a lot of people, about 3,000 people, and it developed from there. The other thing I want to mention about Jeannette is the glass factory, the window glass factory that was developed there, was something new. I mean, something that had not been done in American glass. The old system used the pot glass furnaces with the, you would have 12 or 16 pots around the base of a big furnace, and they would be independently tapped when the glass was ready. You would have a gatherer, a blower, a flattener, a cutter, the whole shop of people who put made the glass. The new factories out of Jeannette instituted a totally new process that had never been tried in the United States. Jeannette was the origin of the tank process. It was a process by which the old pot furnaces were simply forgotten about. They were a system which rotated, like you would start it up and it would go till the pots were empty. But the new process, the tank process, was you could run it 24 hours because you just kept putting in more glass in the tank, and the process was made a lot more economical and productive time-wise. As we start out, what we're going to talk about will be things before Jeannette was ever there. I mean, before Jeannette was there, it was mostly farmland and a few houses around, and a few things happened there that most people have forgotten about. There was a more or less a fort. The Klingensmiths had a fort. There was a massacre there. Between 20 and 30 people were killed. There were several mills. The Smales had a sawmill powered by a water wheel. The Klingensmiths again had a mill upstream from there where they ground grain and cut wood. There was a house out there where Jeannette now is. It was built in the early 1770s. These are things I'll talk about and show in more detail so you can see them. And feel free to comment. I don't see a lot of people commenting on stuff. I realize that people who grow up in an area know a lot more than somebody who just learn by studying. And even though nobody likes to be contradicted, I even less like to say things that are wrong. So if you see something you feel needs comment or amplification or contradiction or whatever, feel free. I mean, that's what this site is all about. It's about an exchange of information, not several people going on and blabbering about this and that. It's about exchange of useful information. And with that, we'll go to the next phase where we show some of the various places and things that were going on before Jeannette was even thought about. Okay. We start with this little picture of an etching that I did showing an old slow freight chugging into Jeannette. The railroad and the availability of natural gas were the two big issues, that and the availability of open land. The railroad, natural gas, and a lot of open land that provided area for expansion were the factors that allowed Jeannette to happen and grow. And I put together this map. This is a map of Jeannette, and the red line shows the railroad going through. This blue line is Brush Creek, which once upon a time was the only real trail or traveling facility going through there. And then there became paths and old roads. I put these five that happened before Jeannette was even thought about. I put Jeannette here as it is now, just so you could relate these things to what's out at Jeannette now. These two, the blue one and the red one, relate to the Klingensmiths family. They were there very early. This is where they had a fort. I believe they were living up there. There was a massacre in 1781. A lot of people got killed. After things settled down and the frontier became more quiet, the Klingensmiths built a mill down here on Brush Creek. And we can see where this is, 130 coming into Jeannette, and Brown Avenue takes off of 130 or Harrison Avenue. And right down over that hill is where it goes over Brush Creek. And right in that area was where the Klingensmith mill was. They had both a grist mill and a sawmill. You could grind your grain and get your boards cut into, get your logs cut into planks. The earliest record we have of the Klingensmith mill is given to us by the taxman who taxed Widow Klingensmith, who was running the mill, in 1802. It could be because her husband was no longer around. There was a massacre at the Klingensmith fort in 1781. And I put this in just to give an impression of what the old mills looked like. This is a Currier and Ives image, and may or may not have much resemblance to the old Klingensmith mill. We really don't know what it looked like. One thing we do know is many of them froze up in the winter, and there was a freeze until the springtime. This is a shot I did out there where the old mill was. This is Brown Avenue coming down off of 130. And this is right over here. This is Brush Creek running through. And we will see some more of this later. But in the meantime, I want to show you a little short video. We are down by Jeannette Steel, which should be pretty obvious. But the reason I stopped here was because we're right by Brush Creek. And we're right at the area where Brush Creek is under the road. And once upon a time, the Klingensmiths had a mill down here many years ago. We first see tax records of it in the early 1800s. And the first person paying tax was Widow Klingensmith. We recall that Philip Klingensmith was killed by an Indian raid in 1781. Part of the attempt of the British to upset the colonists who were rebelling against them. And maybe we can walk over here. We're coming closer to Brush Creek. You see, it still runs on. Just to look at the area here. There were also glass factories here. There was, first of all, Victory Glass. I can recall St. George Crystal. And there was probably another one, and I hesitate to mention. But I think that's all we're going to do right here, and say so long until next.